I'm Idiotech, and today I'm going to review Not a Hero for PC. So Not a Hero is a game where you play as one of several campaigners for a guy called Bunnylord, who is a sociopathic rabbit from the future attempting to win the election. It's a pretty strange game, if I'm honest, guys. So unfortunately I have run into a few technical problems while playing the game. Now, it is important that you realize that I was playing a pre-release build and the developers may fix these issues before the game even comes out. And they did say in the email I received from them that they were having some issues and they were working on them. So it could be completely resolved before it comes out. However, I have had quite a few freezes and crashes while playing the game. So that's something to be aware of. I think the best thing to do here is when you go to buy the game, if you do choose to buy it, just check the forums before you do and make sure everything's okay and that people aren't reporting huge amounts of issues and stuff. The game runs solidly at 60 FPS, so that isn't a problem, but yeah, if it's going to crash on a frequent basis, it may annoy some of you, so that's something to be aware of. The main menu in this game is very basic. It also has a tendency to run at really poor frame rates for some reason. We're talking like 5 to 10 FPS here. You can rebind your controls for both keyboard and gamepad, which is nice to see. However, the audio options menu only allows you to turn sound on or off, and there's no sliders for anything, so that's kind of disappointing. And there's absolutely no graphics options menu at all. Now, ignoring the fact that this is a 2D game, and as a result we don't expect that much in terms of graphic options, I don't expect to see nothing, you know? I expected at least to see resolution options, or windowed mode at the very least. This is an area of the game I feel is kind of rushed and last minute, and if I'm honest, it's backed up by the fact that it performs poorly. I mean, we're talking 5 to 10 FPS here, as I said, and sometimes the navigation is a bit unresponsive, so user interface and menus outside of the actual game, the in-game stuff's totally fine, but outside of the actual game, it's a bit unresponsive, a bit laggy, and there's not really that much there. I really like the way this game looks. It's pixel art, and that is kind of overdone these days, but the way that they've done this and combining it with some really solid animations honestly makes it kind of look fresh and interesting. So the color palette kind of reminds me heavily of Hotline Miami if you've played that game, especially in the early stages of the game, but honestly that isn't a bad thing, and the particle effects for weapons and gore are quite satisfying, if not a bit cringeworthy at times. One criticism I do have is that the levels themselves don't offer much variety visually, and it would have been nice to see a little bit more done in this respect. The music in this game is excellent. It's sort of classic chiptunes type soundtracks, and I think it was made by a various amount of artists, like not just one guy, and it suits the game well. There are some tracks that stand out more than others, and there's nothing I've experienced actually during the time I've been playing the game that's been quite as good as the music in the game's trailer. So if you've seen the trailer, that music, that's kind of the pinnacle of the music in the game. Nonetheless, the music works really well here, and I like it. The sound is also good. Weapons, explosions, stabbing sounds are all great, sometimes a bit gut-wrenching. But yeah, no complaints here. The sound actually really nice in this game. The voice acting as well is superb. I love all the different characters. There's lots of, like, there's a Scottish guy and a Cockney guy and a Welsh lady, and it's really funny the way the characters are done. Both the player characters and the enemies as well, they're all funny. They have sort of unique dialogue based on the level you're playing, so they'll talk about things in context, which is nice. And overall it's funny and charming, if not a little bit absurd at times. So this is the area of the game where I feel it falls down a little bit, if I'm honest. So you have 21 levels to complete, and each of those levels has additional, optional objectives. And that's fine. And it also offers a lot of replayability in the form of additional characters, and those characters have unique movesets, or they behave slightly differently from one another, and they can be utilized in tactical ways on the levels. I like all of that, it's good. I would have liked to see in a couple of extra modes though. So for example, a speedrunning mode. This game seems ideal for speedrunning, if I'm honest, and it would have been nice to see that with maybe some online competitive play options, you know, leaderboards and stuff. I would have really liked to see that. Maybe some other modes as well. Now, what is on offer here is okay, but even with some additional levels, it could have really improved the game, because right now it has kind of a problem with difficulty, in my opinion, where it ramps up very quickly and becomes hard very quickly. And if they had more levels, they would have been able to smooth that curve out more and allow people the time to learn the mechanics, to get more familiar with the game before it became brutally difficult. So honestly guys, I can't comment that much on the story. It's very absurd, it's kind of comical most of the time. Sometimes it feels like it's trying a little bit too hard to be funny, but for the most part it's entertaining and it's humorous. In terms of a serious story here, there's just not one, okay? It's a very ludicrous, very absurd story, and it sets the stage for a ridiculous action type experience. And yeah, it's good, I enjoy it. It's not a problem at all, totally fine. So So the game, for all intents and purposes, is an action platformer. You run from room to room, shooting bad guys, jumping out of windows, taking cover and sliding and reloading and all this stuff, and I really like all of that. It's mechanically satisfying and the game encourages precision and perfect timing, which I also like. All of this is fun and it's executed very well. However, I ran into trouble when it came to the difficulty of the game, and I mentioned this in the previous section. It's a very hard game, honestly, and it requires a lot of trial and error from the player. Now, depending on the type of person you are and the kind of games you like to play, this will either mean that you love the game or you hate it because it's very frustrating. Now, this is clearly a design decision on the part of the developers, and one that exists to encourage replayability, and probably because there's not that much content. Now, whilst I can respect that, it did unfortunately in my case lead to me not being able to progress much further than the middle portion of the game, and that ultimately left me feeling quite frustrated. And I feel the frustration I experienced could have been alleviated by adding a larger selection of levels to the game. You know, as I said previously, this would have smoothed out the difficulty curve substantially, and given those who found the game maybe a bit too challenging, enough content so that even if they didn't complete the game, they'd still feel satisfied. The standard game retails for $12.99 US, and you can also buy a special edition, which is a couple of dollars extra, and you get the soundtrack with that. Honestly, I would have preferred to see the price point set a little bit lower, maybe $9.99 given the amount of content here. Sure, it has a lot of replayability, but if you're the kind of person like me who gets stuck halfway through the game and can't progress much further, right now you're only going to get a couple of hours out of the game before you become frustrated and put it down. So that is something to consider. Maybe wait for a sale if $12.99 is too much for you. Otherwise, you know, it's not an unreasonable price. There are a lot of things to like about this game, possibly even love about this game. I think the art style and aesthetic is great, the animations are great, the sound is great, everything about it's objectively good. I enjoyed the mechanics thoroughly. But at the same time, I feel like my experience was cut short by what I believe to be an unreasonable difficulty curve, and that ultimately left me feeling frustrated, and I wasn't able to progress much further in the game. Now, if you're the kind of person who loves games like this, you love games like Hotline Miami or roguelikes, just pick it up. It's objectively good, it's the kind of game for you, you will love this game. If you're like me though and you find games like this a bit frustrating, save yourself the cost of a new gamepad or keyboard, guys, and just give this game a miss. That was my review of Not a Hero for PC. If you enjoyed this and found it useful in some way, leave a comment, like it, subscribe, do all the things that people tell you to do at the end of YouTube videos, and I'll see you guys next time.